You're just not the woman I married. Chloe, you're... Slower now. That was my husband. Ethan. Dismissing my intellect over breakfast. It was the daily reality of my 3-year experiment. An experiment he was failing spectacularly. I am Chloe Vance, CEO of Cygnus Dynamics. And for 3 years, I have been pretending to have amnesia. He expected my eyes to fill with tears, for my hand to tremble as I processed his casual cruelty. He expected me to be the damaged goods he so often called me behind my back. Instead, my breathing remained even. I just nodded, as if accepting his verdict. He had no idea this test was nearly over. He thought he was asserting his superiority. In reality, he was just providing me with the final evidence I needed for his destruction. His fatal miscalculation was believing I was a victim, when I was the architect. If you're watching this, you know how it feels when someone underestimates you. What they don't know is that the slower person is often the one 3 steps ahead. Hit that like and subscribe button if you are ready to see just how deep this rabbit hole goes, and how a broken wife can tear down an empire. I've spent 3 years, 1,095 days living as a ghost of myself. The sacrifice was immense. I, a woman who built a billion-dollar company from a single line of code, had to pretend I couldn't remember my own email password. I had to bite my tongue while my husband, a man whose entire career was built on my anonymous funding, explained basic market concepts to me. My career, my identity, my mind, all of it, shelved, just for this test. He would pat my head, his voice dripping with false patience. "It's okay, darling," he'd say. "These things are complicated. Don't worry your pretty little head about it." While I was pretending to be stupid, he was using the anonymous bridge loan I secretly arranged through my holding company to cover his 3rd quarter losses. He was mocking the very mind that was secretly keeping his company afloat. That condescension didn't break me. It forged my resolve into steel. I remembered every pat on the head, every dismissive word. They weren't insults, they were receipts. Later that day, I wandered into his home office, pretending to be looking for a book. I mused aloud about a revolutionary AI integration concept, the core of my real project at Cygnus. "What if," I said, feigning confusion, "what if the AI could predict user needs before they typed? This wasn't just an idea, it was my baby. It was the result of my 2 years of secret research at Cygnus. I was handing my life's work to a thief on a silver platter, just to see if he would steal it." Ethan's eyes lit up, but he quickly masked it. "That's interesting, Chloe," he said, turning back to his screen. "A bit simplistic, but cute. Maybe leave the big ideas to me." "Okay." He thought I was musing. He didn't see me check the angle of the hidden security camera I'd installed in the spine of a book last month. He dismissed my idea to my face. But the moment I left the room, his fingers flew across his keyboard, typing my words into a memo for his mistress, Zara. He believed he was a wolf stealing from a lamb. He didn't realize he was a mouse taking bait from a steel trap. I wanted him to steal it. I needed him to. That evening, I knew he would call Zara, his lead developer and mistress. I had already bugged his office. I had to sit downstairs, pretending to watch television, while the man I once loved was in the next room, conspiring with another woman to destroy me. Every muffled laugh I heard through the door was a fresh cut. I remembered the night he hired Zara. He told me she was brilliant, but no threat. He swore, "Chloe, you're the only one for me. My wife, the sickness doesn't change that." While I was downstairs holding on to the memory of that promise, my hidden recorder was capturing the truth upstairs. I heard Ethan's voice on the feed. "You won't believe this. Zara." The amnesiac actually had a coherent thought. His voice was filled with such contempt. That contempt erased any lingering doubt. He wasn't just an opportunist, he was cruel, and I would show him no mercy. I listened to the recording. Zara was skeptical at first, but Ethan convinced her. "It's a billion-dollar idea. Zara, we'll call it Project Chimera. My legacy, his legacy, built on my mind, He was taking my work and my dignity in one fell swoop. He came downstairs an hour later, smiling. Sorry about that. Honey, just work. You know how it is. He kissed my forehead. Ayudas kiss. He kissed me. His lips still warm from plotting my professional ruin. He thought I was oblivious, that his work was a secret. He didn't know that as he was kissing me. The encrypted audio file of his entire conversation with Zara was already uploading from my second device to my secure server at Cygnus. This was it. The twist. My internal payoff. I had him. I had his voice. His intent. And his accomplice all recorded. He thought he'd just stolen an idea. I knew he'd just handed me the signed confession. His overconfidence would be his downfall. He looked at me with such pity, convinced I was a slower, broken version of myself. Have you ever had to smile and nod while someone you loved insulted your very intelligence to your face? Let me know in the comments if you've ever had to play the fool just to survive a situation. The humiliation at the tech fundraiser started the moment we arrived. This was Ethan's world, and he moved through it with a slick, practiced confidence. Zara gliding at his side. I was forced to play the part of the shadow, the vacant wife. I remembered organizing events just like this for Cygnus. I had negotiated multi-million-dollar sponsorships, headlined panels on AI ethics, and commanded the respect of every person in rooms just like this. Now, my sacrifice was my dignity. I was forced to smile and nod, pretending to be overwhelmed by the lights and the noise, while Ethan introduced me to investors with that familiar, pitying tone. This is my wife, Chloe, he'd say. She's had a difficult few years. He thought his words were kind. They were a cage. While I was forcing myself to look confused and small, Ethan was using the powerful social connections my family name gave him, which he thought was just old money. Not Cygnus money to schmooze with the very investors I could buy and sell. He was basking in a spotlight that I had secretly funded. His condescension was a tool. I just needed him to use it publicly. He found his moment in front of the gala's centerpiece, a massive, swirling digital display of generative art. Ethan, Zara, and several key investors from a venture capital firm stood before it. This was the attack. He put his arm around my shoulder, a gesture that looked like affection but was meant to pin me in place. We just love the arts, don't we? Darling, he said to the investors, his voice dripping with faux sincerity. Chloe was an art major. I remembered how he mocked that useless degree. I had endured 3 years of his jokes. At least, she can pick out curtains. He'd laughed once to his friends. She has a good eye for things. He used my cover story, my art history degree, as proof of my intellectual inferiority. While I was pretending to be a simple art lover, I was internally deconstructing the algorithm on the screen. I recognized the kernel. It was based on a recursive framework I'd studied in my actual post-grad work in computational aesthetics. Ethan was mocking my art degree while I was mentally optimizing the code he thought was far beyond me. He was about to make his fatal mistake. He turned to the investors, his smirk firmly in place. It's a shame you can't appreciate the code behind this. Darling, he said, his voice loud enough for everyone in the cluster to hear. It's all algorithms, way over our heads. Right, Zara snickered beside him. The expectation was clear. They all expected me to blush, to look away, to be the broken wife, embarrassed by her own limitations. I didn't move. I just stared at the art. A man stepped forward. I'm the artist, he said. Ethan, caught off guard, immediately began to flatter him. Dr. Thorne, a pleasure. Your work is revolutionary. Dr. Thorne, the artist, looked at me, his gaze curious. And you? Madam, your husband says you're the art expert. This was the twist. Ethan's face froze. He was trapped, I replied, my voice quiet but perfectly clear. It's beautiful, I said. I'm just curious about your particle rendering. Are you using a standard Perlin noise function? Or did you write a custom simplex algorithm? The clustering seems too organic for a standard library. The silence was immediate. Ethan's smile vanished. Zara's face went pale. The artist's eyes widened. That's incredibly astute. Doctor, Thorne said, ignoring Ethan completely. It is a custom simplex algorithm. He and I then engaged in a 5-minute, highly technical discussion about GPU processing and generative adversarial networks. The investors weren't idiots. They understood exactly what was happening. They were watching the broken, amnesiac wife discuss high-level code with a certified genius. The payoff was exquisite. Ethan was left standing there, looking like a complete fool, his own trap snapping shut on him. The car ride home was frigid. Ethan was seething, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. I had spent 3 years walking on eggshells, forcing myself to be less just to keep the peace. Any time I had accidentally said something smart, he would get angry, accusing me of pretending to be sick or confusing him. My amnesia wasn't just a test, it had become a shield to manage his fragile fording the racin. Toxic ego. He used to promise, "I'll take care of you. Chloe, I'll be your rock." While I was holding on to the memory of that promise, I knew he was using my sickness as an excuse to build a new life with Zara. His rock promise was a lie, he told himself, so he could feel like a good man while betraying me. Now, his narcissism was wounded. He had been publicly humiliated, and I knew he would escalate. He wouldn't apologize. He would punish. It's one thing to be underestimated. It's another to be publicly mocked by the one person who is supposed to be your biggest defender. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to hide your intelligence just to make someone else feel powerful? Tell me in the comments if you've ever had to bite your tongue while a smaller person took credit for your mind. His retaliation for the gala was swift and predictable. He didn't even go to work the next morning. He waited, seething, until I was in the kitchen, pretending to read the paper. He tossed a bank statement onto the quartz island. It slid across the smooth surface and stopped right in front of me. "I've frozen our joint account," he announced. His voice was cold, flat. This was his punishment. I remembered opening that account. I remembered the $25,000 of my pre-Cygnus savings that I used to fund it. It was supposed to be our fresh start fund, a symbol of our partnership. I had sacrificed my own financial independence for the illusion of a marriage, an illusion he was now gleefully tearing apart. He had promised me, holding my hand at the bank, "We're a team. Chloe, what's mine is yours." While I was believing in that team, he was already seeing me as a dependent. While I was remembering my $25,000 contribution, he was using that very account to buy expensive dinners for Zara, all while preparing to mock me for not contributing. He thought he was taking my lifeline. He was only confirming his own parasitic nature. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a vicious, controlled hiss. This was the attack. If you can't contribute, Chloe, you can't spend. He relished the words. From now on, you'll get an allowance. $500 a week. Like a child. His eyes were alight with a cruel victory. This was what he wanted. He expected me to panic. He expected me to cry, to break down, to beg him for grocery money. He needed to see me as worthless, as the damaged goods he'd called me, completely dependent on his generosity. He needed to erase the humiliation he felt at the gala by asserting his total financial control. His expectation was my utter collapse. I looked up from the counter, meeting his gaze. My hands weren't shaking. My breathing was even. This was the twist. I just nodded. My expression, one of mild, confused acceptance, the exact mask I had perfected over 3 long years. "I understand, Ethan," I said, my voice just a quiet whisper. The lack of a reaction infuriated him more than tears ever could have. He had expected a storm. He got a fog. He couldn't understand my calm, so he interpreted it as shell-shocked defeat, as the final breaking of my simple mind. The payoff was immediate. He scoffed, his face twisting in contempt. "Good. Glad we're clear." He grabbed his briefcase, straightened his tie, and left for the office. He walked out of the house smug, triumphant. believing he had just put his broken wife firmly in her place. He had no idea he had just lost the last shred of power he ever had over me. His mistake, his fatal, arrogant mistake, was believing I was defeated. This supreme overconfidence would only make him and Zara more reckless. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, I dropped the mask. I took out my real phone, the encrypted Cygnus device he didn't know existed. The one I kept hidden in a hollowed-out copy of War and Peace. This man was trying to give me an allowance. An allowance. I thought about the $400 million operating budget I had personally approved for Cygnus last quarter. I thought about the stress, the sleepless nights, the absolute sacrifice of my life and my career, all to build that wealth. He'd always called my pre-amnesia self-intimidating. He'd said, "It's nice, Chloe, seeing you softer, more approachable." While I was pretending to be softer, he was stealing my ideas and mocking my intelligence. Now he was trying to financially strangle the very woman whose intimidating wealth was the only thing keeping his company from being delisted. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a pet. I opened my secure banking app. I saw the billions in the Cygnus holding accounts. I opened a new -end process, private trust account under my maiden name, Chloe Vance. I transferred $50 million into it. It took 12 seconds. I looked at the statement Ethan had thrown at me. The joint account, the one he had so triumphantly frozen, held $8,200. He was fighting me for pennies while I commanded oceans. He had bragged to his friends. I knew from my listening devices. She's totally dependent on me now. It's a big responsibility. While he was bragging about his responsibility for my $8,000, I was laughing at his audacity. He was trying to take my allowance while I was deciding whether to buy his entire office building just to evict him. I watched his car disappear down the street. I felt like a king. He had no idea he was a court jester in a kingdom that I owned. He tried to control me by taking away what he thought was my only access to money. He tried to make me feel small, to reduce me to the status of a child. Have you ever had someone try to use money to control you, to make you feel powerless? Let me know in the comments if you know the agonizing feeling of being financially underestimated. Ethan's supreme overconfidence, born from my calm reaction to his financial attack, infected Zara. They became reckless. They thought I was a non-entity, a piece of furniture in his house. A few days later, Zara came over. Using the excuse of dropping off some files for Ethan, I was in the kitchen, making coffee, playing the part of the domestic, broken wife. She sauntered in, a stack of documents in her hand. This was her moment. This was the attack. She accidentally left a thick, bound document on the counter. "Oh, silly me," she said, her voice a sickly sweet poison. "That's Project Chimera." She left it there. Pages of complex algorithms and design specifications. She intended for me, the amnesiac, to see it. She wanted me to look at the work she was now claiming, the work my husband had stolen for her, and feel confused. She wanted me to feel utterly, hopelessly stupid. I remembered when I first hired Zara at Cygnus, 4 years ago, before my accident. She was a junior coder, brilliant but raw. I personally mentored her. I spent my time, my energy, my resources building her career. I gave her the opportunities that got her noticed by Ethan in the first place. I had sacrificed my evenings to review her code, believing I was investing in the next generation of female coders. She had thanked me, her eyes wide with gratitude. "You've changed my life, Chloe," she'd said. "I'll never forget what you've done for me." While I was remembering that promise, she was standing in my kitchen, using the very career I built for her as a weapon against me. She was flaunting the stolen fruit of my mind, trying to make me feel worthless. She hadn't just forgotten my kindness. She was actively, cruelly betraying it. Her expectation was simple. I would glance at the specs. My slow brain would fail to comprehend the complex data, and I would be reminded of my own inferiority. She wanted to see the flicker of confusion and pain in my eyes. She wanted me to feel like a burden, just as Ethan called me, What she didn't know was that I was the one who needed those documents. The audio recording proved their intent. But the specs, that was the hard, tangible proof of the intellectual property theft. I needed a copy. She thought she was taunting me. She was delivering the final piece of evidence to her executioner. I stared at the document. Feigning confusion. Chimera primera, I asked, my voice trembling just right. That's a funny name. Sarah smirked. It's the future. Chloe. Something Ethan and I have been building. It's complicated. She said complicated with the same dismissive tone Ethan used. I thought of the nights I'd spent developing that architecture. The sleepless nights. The cold dinners. The sacrifice of my own mental and physical health to solve the very problems she was now claiming as her own. I remembered the breakthrough. That 3 a.m. moment when the final algorithm clicked into place. I had cried with relief and exhaustion. That was my breakthrough. My sacrifice. While I was remembering that moment of pure, agonizing creation, she was standing there, taking credit for my genius. She was acting as if my sleepless nights were her personal triumph. This wasn't just theft. It was an erasure of my entire being. This was the twist. I picked up my full mug of black coffee. My hand trembled. "Oh," I said, playing the part of the clumsy, nerve-shaken wife. "Oh, dear." I tripped over the edge of the kitchen mat and spilled the entire mug of hot coffee directly onto the Project Chimera specifications. The dark liquid flooded the pages, soaking the binding, blurring the ink. Zara shrieked. "You idiot, you clumsy." She stopped herself. But the mask was off. "Those are the only hard copies," she yelled. I burst into fake, panicked tears. "I'm so sorry, I'm so clumsy. Let me help," in my frantic, apologetic state. I grabbed the soaked, dripping pile of pages. "I'll dry them. I'll fix it." I rushed them to the sink, dabbing them uselessly with paper towels, my body shielding her view. The payoff was perfect. While I was dabbing the ruined pages, my other hand, the one holding my hidden Cygnus phone, was moving. In the 30 seconds of feigned panic, I photographed 8 of the key architectural pages, the ones containing my unique, time-stamped code structure. The algorithm that was my digital fingerprint. I had the final, concrete proof. I had the murder weapon. I handed the ruined but now fully documented papers back to a furious, sputtering Zara. I'm so sorry," I cried. Her face was a mask of pure rage. She snatched the soggy mess from my hands. She was furious about the paper. She had no idea I was furious about the lie. She stormed out, convinced I was a useless, clumsy fool. The ruined document would panic them. They would realize their only hard copy was destroyed. They would have no choice but to accelerate their launch, to rush their stolen product to market before any more accidents could happen. They thought they were running away from a problem. They were running directly into my trap. It's a special kind of violation when someone not only steals from you but then tries to humiliate you with what they've stolen. They count on you being too weak or too broken to fight back. Have you ever had to pretend to be weak or clumsy to hide your true strength? Tell me in the comments if you know what it feels like to play the fool while you're secretly gathering the ammunition. The accident with the coffee-soaked documents worked exactly as I'd planned. It induced panic. Ethan and Zara were terrified. I had seen something, or that their only hard copy was destroyed. They accelerated the launch of Project Chimera to this morning. The morning of my execution, or so he thought. He came downstairs, not in his usual work suit, but in the expensive, custom-tailored Italian suit he'd saved for this exact day. He looked like a conqueror. I was sitting at the kitchen table, pretending to sip tea, the picture of the docile, omniscient's wife. I remembered our wedding day. I remembered the vows we spoke. In sickness and in health, I had meant them. I had sacrificed everything, my career, my mind, my identity to honor that vow, to test the man I'd married. He, on the other hand, had seen my sickness not as a test of his character, but as an opportunity to betray me, He had promised to be my rock. I'll be here. Chloe. No matter what. He'd sworn, while I was holding on to that vow. He was using my sickness as a cover to steal my life's work and build a new future with his mistress. In sickness and in health only applied when I was the healthy one. Funding his dreams. He didn't say good morning. He simply placed a thick envelope on the table in front of me. I filed for divorce. Chloe, he said, his voice brimming with a triumphant, rehearsed finality. This was the attack. He was abandoning me on the morning of his greatest triumph. A triumph he had stolen directly from my mind. He was cutting the final thread. I'm trading up, he continued, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. My launch today solidifies my legacy. You're just damaged goods. Damaged goods. He said the words to my face. The words he had been whispering behind my back for 3 years. He was throwing me away like a broken tool. Now that he had what he needed from me, I thought of the sacrifices, the lonely nights, the constant, agonizing pretense, the humiliation of being patronized by a man I could intellectually run circles around. I had done this. I had endured this. To give him a chance to prove he was the man I thought I'd married. I gave him a test, and he had failed at every conceivable turn. I remembered him begging me for seed money for his first startup. Years ago. I can't do this without you. Chloe, he'd said. You're my partner. I sacrificed my own savings. $20,000. To get him started. While I was remembering my role as his first and most loyal partner, he was standing in front of me, discarding me like trash because I was no longer useful to his ambitions. He was the ultimate parasite, and he was finally ready to detach from the host. His expectation was clear. He wanted to see me shatter. He needed me to break. He expected tears, hysteria, begging. He wanted the satisfaction of watching the damaged wife he was abandoning collapse in on herself, proving he was right to leave. He wanted to walk out that door to his glorious future. With the sound of my sobs as his victory anthem, he had combined his ultimate professional triumph with his ultimate personal abandonment, a 1-2 punch designed to utterly destroy me. This was the twist. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't even look surprised. I picked up the pen he had so thoughtfully included in the envelope. I found the signature line. My hand was perfectly steady as I signed my name, Chloe Vance. I pushed the papers back toward him. Good luck today. Ethan, I said. My voice as calm and even as a frozen lake. You're going to need it. The payoff was immediate and delicious. His arrogant smirk faltered. A flicker of genuine confusion. No. Fear crossed his face. He was unnerved. My calm was the one thing he hadn't prepared for. It didn't fit his narrative of the broken wife, but he was too arrogant, too blinded by his own impending legacy. To understand what it meant, he scoffed, recovering his composure. Right. Chloe, he said, snatching the papers. Whatever you say. He straightened his jacket, gave me one last look of pure, unadulterated contempt, and walked out the door. Leaving me alone in the house he thought he'd won. He left, walking straight into the public execution I had spent the last 3 years preparing. The moment the front door clicked shut, the mask I had worn for 1,095 days finally fell. My face was cold steel. I thought about his final insult. Damaged goods. He thought he was leaving me with nothing. He had no idea he was leaving me with everything. He had just signed his walking papers. Not mine. I picked up my real phone. The encrypted Cygnus device. I hit the number for my chief operating officer. Julian. He answered on the first ring. He's on his way to the launch. I said. He's in the car. Julian's voice was all business. The team is ready. Chloe, are we green? I looked out the window as Ethan's car disappeared down the street. We are green. Julian, I said. Execute the launch. Burn it all to the ground. This wasn't just a breakup. This was a hostile takeover. He thought he was trading up. He had no idea he was being liquidated. Have you ever been discarded by someone who thought you were no longer useful? The moment they believe you have nothing left to offer, they reveal their true, monstrous selves. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had to face the betrayal of being treated as disposable. The Nexus Tech launch event was a masterpiece of arrogance. The auditorium was packed. A sea of over 1,000 people investors, tech journalists from every major outlet, and industry rivals, all buzzing. This was Ethan's coronation. I wasn't there. Of course, I was in the Cygnus Dynamics war room, my real office, watching the live feed on a wall of screens. My COO, Julian, stood beside me, our legal team on standby. Ethan took the stage to thunderous applause. The spotlight hit him, and he soaked it in, raising his arms like a rock star. My rock star, built on my code. I thought about the sacrifice. I had given up my stage, my keynotes, my reputation as a leader in this industry. I had allowed myself to be erased so that he could shine. He had told me once, "You're just not cut out for the spotlight. Chloe, you're too introverted. It's better this way." While I was forcing myself to be invisible to appease his ego, he was using my absence to build his own cult of personality. He wasn't just stealing my work. He was stealing the public recognition that I had earned and sacrificed. He began his speech. It was a disgusting monument to his own ego. Innovation isn't just about an idea. He gloated, pacing the stage. It's about vision. It's about the courage to see what others can't. His vision. His courage. I looked at the coffee-stained mine, photographed specs in my hand. He was reading my project proposal, almost verbatim, and calling it his vision. I remembered the investors who had called him the next big thing. I remembered how he'd come home, giddy with their praise. "They see me. Chloe," he'd said. "They finally see my genius." He had no genius. He was a parrot, and he didn't even know it. While I was sitting in the dark, secretly running my own billion-dollar company, he was standing in the spotlight, taking credit for the mind he had tried to financially strangle with a $500 a week allowance. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. He was building to his crescendo. For 3 years, he boomed. "My team and I have been working in secret on something that will not just change the market. It will create it." He was using my 3-year amnesia test as his development timeline. The audacity was breathtaking. I had spent 3 years of my life in a self-imposed prison, sacrificing my very identity to test his loyalty. He had spent those same 3 years using my sickness as a cover to plot his grand theft. While I was enduring his daily insults and his pitying glances, he was conspiring with my former protege to erase me from my own legacy. He thought he was a visionary. He was nothing but a common thief in an expensive suit. This was the attack. He took a dramatic pause. The auditorium was silent, hanging on his every word. "I give you the future. I give you Project Chimera." He pointed triumphantly to the massive 60-foot screen behind him, ready for his demo to play. He expected thunderous applause. He expected the stock ticker to explode. He expected his world to change forever. He was right about that last part. The twist was instant. As he said the word chimera, the screen didn't play his demo. It flashed, cutting to a harsh, bright white background with 2 words in bold. Black text, "Hostile takeover." A live broadcast feed took over the screen. It wasn't his demo. It was me. I was sitting at my real desk, in my real office at Cygnus Dynamics. I wasn't the slower, broken wife in a bathrobe. I was in a sharp, black CEO power suit, my hair and makeup immaculate, my expression cold as ice. The chyron at the bottom of the screen read, "Chloe Vance, CEO, Cygnus Dynamics." The payoff was a wave of total, shocked silence. The air was sucked out of the room. Ethan froze on stage, his triumphant smile melting into a mask of pure, uncomprehending horror. He stared at my image, his mouth half open. I leaned forward, looking directly into the camera, as if I was staring into his soul. Good morning, I said, my voice echoing through the auditorium. I'm Chloe Vance, CEO of Cygnus Dynamics. We'd like to announce our new platform, Project Cygnus, which, coincidentally, with its identical architecture, launched 1 hour ago. The room didn't erupt. It just died. 1,000 people, including Ethan, stood frozen, realizing the visionary was a fraud, and his broken wife was the real apex predator. There is no sweeter justice than watching a con man, at the absolute peak of his triumph, realize he's been outplayed. He thought he was the master of the universe. He was just the final, stupid pawn in my game. Have you ever had to watch someone else take credit for your hard work? Tell me in the comments what you'd give to see the look on their face when the truth finally comes out. The silence in the auditorium was a vacuum, lasting only a second before Ethan's voice cracked the air. She's lying, he shrieked into the microphone, his face contorted in a mask of panic and rage. She's insane. She's an amnesiac. He pointed a trembling finger at my face on the 60-foot screen. That woman is my wife. She's sick. She's delusional. This was his attack. This was his only move. He was trying to use the very amnesiac persona I had perfected, the vulnerability I had faked, as his shield and his weapon. He was counting on the crowd's bias. He was the successful, powerful male CEO. I was just the sick wife. He expected them to believe him, to pity him for being slandered by his crazy spouse. For 3 agonizing years, I had lived as that sick woman. I had sacrificed my mind, my voice, my very identity. I had endured the pitying looks, the whispers, the constant, suffocating condescension. He had loved my sickness. It's nice, Chloe, he'd said to me once, seeing you softer, more approachable. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a pet. While I was pretending to be softer, he was using my sickness as his alibi. He used it to travel with Zara, telling our friends I wasn't well enough to attend. He used it to dismiss my opinions. Now, he was trying to use it to save his life. He thought he was discrediting a witness. He didn't realize he was just confirming his motive. On the screen, my expression remained perfectly, icily calm. I let his tirade echo and die in the stunned room. Insane. Ethan delusional, I asked, my voice cutting through the tension. You're right about one thing. I am your wife, which means I know exactly how your mind works, how it crawls. I leaned forward, my eyes locking onto the camera. We at Cygnus Dynamics also filed a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit for intellectual property theft against Nexus Tech this morning. The SEC was notified 7 minutes ago. A collective gasp swept the room. The press began shouting. Ethan's face went white. She has no proof, he screamed, his voice disparate. It's slander. It's a personal vendetta from a woman scorned. He called it a vendetta. I thought about the humiliation I'd endured in my own kitchen, pretending to be a clumsy fool, spilling that coffee. I remembered Zara's smug, pitying look. It's the future, Chloe, something we've been building. While I was acting the part of the clumsy idiot, I was secretly photographing the evidence that would bury them both. While they were mocking my inability to understand the complex documents, I was documenting their crime. He wanted proof. I was happy to provide it. Proof, I said from the screen, my voice dangerously soft. You're right, Ethan. A lawsuit of this magnitude does require proof. The screen behind me, the one he had intended for his glorious demo, split into 2 columns. On the left, a screen capture of his current presentation slide, showing the core architecture of Project Chimera. On the right, my phone's photograph of the coffee-stained specification sheet I had ruined in my kitchen 3 days ago. They were identical, word for word, ligne for ligne. The payoff was explosive. The room erupted. It wasn't a gasp this time. It was a roar. Cameras flashed, blinding Ethan on the stage. Investors were on their feet, shouting, pointing. Reporters were yelling questions. The visual proof was absolute. Undeniable. The close-up shot on the screen even showed the brown the essentially wrinkled coffee stains on my copy. The timestamp from my phone was clearly visible. He wasn't a visionary. He wasn't a rival. He was a common, lazy thief who had stolen his life's work from his sick wife. His lie was exposed in the most public, humiliating way imaginable. D5. E8. He stood there, frozen, drowning in the wall of noise. That code. It wasn't just an idea. It was the idea. It had cost me 2 years of sleepless nights. It was the culmination of my entire career. The work I had intended to be my legacy. He had tried to steal it. To make it his legacy. You just don't have the head for business. Chloe. He had told me. Just last week. Patting my hand as he reviewed the stock options my secret funding had secured for him. Don't worry. I'll provide for us. While I was silently running a billion-dollar conglomerate from my hidden phone. He was patronizing me with his plans. While I was building my real legacy, he was stealing the copy. Now, his only legacy would be this moment. The moment a coffee stain proved he was a fraud. He tried to use my sickness as a weapon. To paint me as delusional. Asaliar. It's the oldest trick in the book when a man is cornered. He attacks the woman's sanity. Have you ever had someone try to use your vulnerability, your kindness, or your trust against you? Have you ever been called crazy or emotional just for speaking the truth? Let me know in the comments below. Ethan was cornered, but not yet defeated. The visual proof, the coffee-stained document, had stunned the crowd. But he saw a sliver of an opening. He doubled down. This was his final, desperate attack. Fabricated, he roared, finding his voice again. This proves nothing. Look at her, she's sitting in an office somewhere, pulling a prank. This is what she does. She's delusional. He was trying to pivot. He was trying to turn my evidence into an exhibit of my insanity. He was trying to make the media question me. He was banking on the world believing that a sick, scorned woman was capable of elaborate forgery, but not of genius. I had sacrificed my dignity for 3 long years, allowing him to treat me like a fragile patient, not a partner. I had endured his condescending pats on the head, the way he would simplify the news for me, the way he would speak about me to our friends as if I weren't even in the room. I had allowed him to build a narrative of my incompetence. I have to handle everything now. Of course. Hedsieg. Playing the martyr. It's a lot. But she's my wife. While I was allowing him to paint me as a medical burden, he was seeing that burden as a legal defense. He was already planning. I knew. To use my amnesia as a weapon in our divorce. To paint me as an unfit, unreliable narrator of my own life. He thought delusional was his shield. I was about to prove it was his confession. On the screen, I let him finish his tirade. The investors were looking back and forth, from the rabid man on the stage to the calm woman on the screen. They were confused. They wanted to believe the man they had invested millions in. Delusional, I asked again, my voice cutting through the noise. You're right. Ethan, it's a terrible thing when a mind gets clouded, when it says one thing, but does another. I thought about the sheer, agonizing hypocrisy. I had sacrificed my own mental health sitting in that house, forcing myself to listen to the audio feeds from his office. I had to listen to him and Zara laugh as they dissected my simplistic idea. I had to listen to my own husband mock my intelligence, his voice filled with contempt, while I was in the next room, pretending to read a book. Every muffled laugh I'd heard through the wall was a fresh, physical blow. I endured that psychological torture to get the truth. He had come downstairs after that very call, the one I had just recorded. He kissed my forehead. Sorry about that. Honey, just work. You know how it is. That was his lie. That was his deception. While I was reeling from the sound of his betrayal, my stomach in knots. He was kissing me, his lips still warm from plotting my professional ruin. He was using my amnesiac trust as his cover, believing I was too slow to ever suspect a thing. He thought his words were private. He thought his contempt was a secret. He was about to find out what broadcast really means. Let's talk about Project Chimera. I said to the auditorium. You named it that. Didn't you? I remembered musing that idea to him. I had sacrificed my own creativity. My own baby. Handing it to him just to see if he would steal it. That's interesting. Chloe, he'd said, his voice dripping with condescension. A bit simplistic, but cute. Maybe leave the big ideas to me. Okay, while I was pretending to be simplistic, he was feverishly typing that simplistic idea into a memo. He mocked my intellect to my face while simultaneously recognizing its billion-dollar value in private. He didn't just steal my idea, he insulted me while he did it. You're right, Ethan. I am delusional. I said. I was delusional to ever think you were a man of character. This was the twist. I was delusional to think you wouldn't steal from your sick wife. I leaned in. But luckily for me, I'm not just delusional. I'm also a hoarder. I record everything. And then I gave the signal. The audio file from part 1 began to play over the auditorium's concert-grade speakers. Ethan's voice, Zara's voice, echoing, surrounding them. She's so stupid. She doesn't even know what she's saying. Ethan's voice. Are you sure? It's advanced. Zara's voice. Trust me. She's a broken record. We'll call it Project Chimera. It's my legacy now. Ethan's voice. The payoff was absolute. It was the sound of a bomb detonating in a library. Total, deafening silence. The audio played for 30 agonizing seconds, ending with Ethan and Zara laughing. Every camera, every phone, every eye in that room was fixed on Ethan. He was pale, trembling, his mouth open in a silent scream. He had been exposed. Not by my words, not by a fabricated document, but by his own voice, his own arrogance, his own confession. He was ruined. And the audio hadn't just incriminated him, it had incriminated her. He wanted the spotlight. I had sacrificed my own reputation for 3 years, hiding from that spotlight for my health. While he used it to build his name on my foundation, he loved the applause. He loved the attention. Now, he had it. He was the center of the world's attention. And he had just been revealed as a pathetic, cruel, unoriginal thief. He could never, ever escape this. The silence was deafening, the truth hanging in the air like poison. He had used my sickness as his final weapon, and it had just backfired in the most spectacular way. Have you ever had your own words, your own truths, twisted and used against you? Have you ever been called crazy or delusional for trying to expose a lie? Let me know in the comments below. The audio recording ended with the sound of their shared, cruel laughter. The silence that followed was heavier than any noise. Every eye in that auditorium, every investor, every reporter, every rival pivoted from the frozen, trembling man on the stage to the other voice from the recording. They scanned the front row, and they found her. Zara. She was as pale as a ghost, looking at Ethan with wide, terrified eyes. I remembered hiring Zara. I remembered seeing her raw talent, a brilliant mind waiting to be shaped. I sacrificed my time, my evenings, my energy to mentor her. I gave her the chances, the projects, and the praise that got her promoted. She had sat in my kitchen, drinking my coffee, and promised me she would make me proud. While I was remembering my investment in her career, I knew she had been using that access to sleep with my husband and plot the theft of my life's work. She didn't just betray me as a boss, she betrayed me as a mentor and as a woman. Ethan was a cornered animal. He was hyperventilating, his eyes darting from the board members in the front row to the exits, and then back to Zara. He saw his entire world, his company, his reputation, his freedom evaporating in real time. He saw the investors and the board staring at him with cold fury. And in one final, pathetic, cowardly act of self-preservation, he made his last move. He lifted his shaking hand. No longer a conqueror, just a disparity. Drowning man, And he pointed directly at his mistress. It was her, he screamed, his voice cracking. She did it. Zara was my lead developer. She manipulated me. She was my mistress. Yes. But she used that I trusted her. She must have stolen the code from Cygnus. She lied to me. She fed me this project. It was all her. He was trying to save himself. He was blaming her. The man who had just been recorded. In his own voice. Calling me stupid and claiming my idea as his legacy. I thought of all the times he'd praised Zara to me over the last year. She's a real killer. Chloe, he'd said. A great asset. So loyal. He had promoted her. Given her massive bonuses I had secretly funded. While I was enduring their thinly veiled private jokes and their late work nights, he was building her up. Not as a partner, but as the perfect, eventual scapegoat. He was never her ally, he was just her eventual executioner. The entire room now stared at Zara. She was frozen, her face a mask of pure, uncomprehending shock. This was his expectation. He expected her to collapse. He expected her to burst into tears. To be the emotional woman who would be too hysterical to defend herself. He thought he could pin his corporate and marital crimes on his mistress and somehow, impossibly, walk away. He thought she would take the fall for him. But this was the twist. Zara was a narcissist. Just like him. She wasn't an amnesiac. She hadn't spent 3 years practicing calm obedience. She was a viper. And he had just stepped on her. She saw her entire career, her reputation, and her future being incinerated in front of 1,000 witnesses. She stood up. "He's lying," she shrieked, her voice raw with betrayal. You bastard." She turned to the board, to the cameras. "He's lying. He told me it was his idea. He gave me the concepts, he fed me the code. He's the one who recorded his wife in their home. I just helped." And there it was. The payoff. The final, glorious implosion. The trifecta of betrayal. Ethan's last ally. His partner in crime and in bed. Turning on him and confessing to the entire conspiracy in front of the entire world. He had tried to throw her under the bus. But she had just chained herself to his ankle and pulled him under with her. They were screaming at each other now. Liv. On stage. In front of everyone. "You ruined me. You lied to me." It was pathetic. It was beautiful. He had no one left. He was completely and totally alone. It's a special kind of justice. Watching two snakes, who were united only by their shared desire to poison you, finally turn and bite each other. He thought he was the puppet master. But he was just another puppet. Have you ever been the common enemy that united two terrible people? Let me know in the comments if you've ever had the satisfaction of watching them finally, inevitably, turn on each other. As Ethan and Zara screamed at each other, affrontique, chaotic symphony of mutual betrayal. The real story was happening on the stock ticker. The investors in the front row weren't watching the bickering thieves anymore. They were staring, horrified, at their phones. I had sacrificed my capital to keep Nexus Tech afloat for 3 years. I had personally, anonymously, injected over $50 million through shell companies to prop up his stock price. All as part of my test. I wanted to see what he would do with success. He had promised me, when I gave him his first seed money, "We're partners. Chloe, 50-50. Your investment is safe with me." While I was secretly protecting our investment, he was using that artificially stable stock price as collateral to buy lavish gifts for Zara and to mock me for not understanding his genius market moves. He thought he was a market genius. He was a parasite living on a host he didn't even know existed. The attack, when it came, wasn't from me. It was from reality. A reporter from the Wall Street Journal stood up, his phone held high. "Mr. Harrison," he shouted, his voice cutting through the bickering. "Mr. Harrison, your stock just halted trading. It dropped 70% in 90 seconds. Is it true the board has called an emergency meeting and locked you out of the building?" Locked you out. I thought about the power he wielded. The boardroom was his domain. I had sacrificed my own career, my own seat at tables, just like that, to play the part of his sick, anxious wife. These meetings are too stressful for you. Honey, he'd say, the picture of a concerned husband. Let me handle the pressure. You just rest. While I was forcing myself to stay home, pretending to be too anxious for public life, he was taking my place, using my ideas to sound brilliant, and solidifying his power with the very colleagues who used to respect me. He loved the power of that room. He loved the feeling of locking others out. Ethan stopped screaming. He stopped breathing. He was still on stage, but he was finally, completely, alone. His expectation, even in his panic, was that he still had some control. He was the CEO. He was Nexus Tech. He thought he could talk his way out of it. Blame Zara. Appeal to the board he had stacked with his friends. The twist was the reporter's shout. It wasn't a question. It was an obituary. The board, his friends, had already acted. The market had already judged him. His control was zero. The words "locked you out" finally broke him. The payoff was his collapse. He didn't just faint. His legs crumpled beneath him. A puppet, with its strings cut, he fell to his knees, and then pitched forward onto his face, right in the center of the stage that was supposed to be his coronation. A pathetic, broken man in a $5,000 suit. I had sacrificed my dignity for 3 years, being paraded as his sick wife, the object of his public protection. Just lean on me, Chloe, he'd say at these events. I'm your rock. I'll protect you. While I was pretending to be weak and leaning on him in public, he was using my sickness as a social tool to gain sympathy from investors, making himself look noble. He used my weakness to make himself look strong. Now, the whole world was watching him literally collapse from his own. On the giant screen, my face remained impassive, watching him. The cameras in the room frantically panned between the unconscious man on the floor and the silent woman on the screen. I had seen enough. I gave the signal. My broadcast cut to black. The show was over. He wanted me out of his world. He told me I was too soft for it. Fine. I had just taken his world. And now, I was showing him the door. This was the end of his legacy. But it was the beginning of my retribution. He thought a public collapse was rock bottom. He had no idea how much further I was going to make him fall. Have you ever watched someone who built their entire identity on being strong completely fall apart when faced with real consequences? Let me know in the comments if you believe that true strength is quiet, and true arrogance is always loud. Ethan didn't get to enjoy his collapse for long. Security hauled him from the stage, dragging him through a back corridor and into the emergency board meeting he had been locked out of. He was thrown into a chair at the head of the massive oak table. His friends, his allies, the men he had appointed. I had sacrificed my own seat at tables like this, my own hard-won reputation in the industry, all to play his supportive, unstable wife. He'd told me, board politics are too nasty. Chloe, you're too emotional for it. While I was pretending to be too emotional, he was using my contacts, the very men now sitting at this table to stack his board and build his own little kingdom. He thought they were his loyal soldiers. He had no idea they were just my contacts, and their loyalty was only to the bottom line. He tried to gather his shattered dignity. This was his attack. This is a circus, he stammered. My wife, she's unstable. She's having a psychotic break. This is a personal vendetta. He was trying to manipulate them, to paint me as the hysterical woman scorned. He was counting on their misogyny, the same misogyny he had cultivated. I remembered him mocking another CEO whose wife sued him. Never mix business with hysterical women. He'd laughed over dinner. They'll burn you every time. While I was forcing myself to smile at his casual, vile sexism, I was already planning this day, knowing he would use that exact hysterical defense. He thought he was rallying his troops. He expected them to circle the wagons, to protect him from me. He wasn't that worried. Even as he said it, I knew his mind was already calculating his exit. He had his golden parachute. I knew, because I had negotiated it for him. I remembered the night we'd finalized his CEO contract. You're a genius at the details. Chloe. He'd laughed, kissing me. This thing is ironclad. It's a $30 million parachute. It'll protect me from anything. He thought I was just being a supportive wife. Dotting the I's. He didn't know I was also the one who had written the morality clause. While I was acting as his brilliant but non-threatening advisor, he was already sleeping with Zara. He was already planning to use that $30 million to fund his new life after he divorced the sick wife who had just secured it for him. He was now counting on my own work to be his escape plan. The board's lead counsel, a man Ethan had hired, but I had recommended, didn't even look at him. This was the twist. Mr. Harrison, the lawyer said, his voice like gravel. Your wife's vendetta is backed by 2 audio confessions, 4 sworn affidavits from Cygnus engineers, and time-stamped proof of IP theft. The SEC has already frozen your personal and Nexus Tech's primary assets. The company is insolvent as of 10 minutes ago. The lawyer pushed a single sheet of paper across the table. This is our only way out. Cygnus Dynamics has made an offer. An offer, Ethan spat. She's suing us. No. The lawyer corrected. She has sued. But she is offering to acquire Nexus Tech's assets for 10 cents on the dollar, to absorb the lawsuit and prevent this entire board from being implicated in your fraud. The board members winced. He wasn't being sued. They were. Ethan's face went purple. You can't. The company is worth billions. My genius. Your genius. Mr. Harrison, the lawyer, interrupted. We also discovered the miracle $50 million venture capital investment you secured last year. Oh. I remembered that miracle. He'd come home, drunk on champagne and self-congratulation. We're saved. Chloe, I did it. My genius is finally paying off. He was so arrogant. While I was secretly signing the wire transfer from an anonymous Cygnus holding company to save his hour asset, he was using that same money to take Zara to Paris. He was literally spending my money while calling me financially inept at a dinner party that same week. It wasn't from a VC. The lawyer continued. It was from an anonymous holding company. Ms. Vance's holding company. The company isn't worth billions. Mr. Harrison, it's bankrupt. And has been for a year. Your geniuses was just your wife's cash. The payoff was absolute. The board members, his friends, realized they hadn't been betrayed by me. They had been conned by him. The vote was unanimous. You're fired. Ethan, the chairman said, for cause. Ethan just laughed. A broken, hysterical sound. Fire me, I don't care. I've got my parachute. $30 million. Read the contract my wife wrote. The lawyer didn't flinch. This was the final twist. We did read it. Mr. Harrison. He turned to page 12. Section 4. The morality clause. The one she insisted on. Any act of gross misconduct. Including, but not limited to, Fraud. Embezzlement. Or an act of moral turpitude that brings shame upon the company. The lawyer looked up. I'd say audio proof of you conspiring to steal from your sick wife and blaming your mistress qualifies as moral turpitude. You get nothing. Nothing. Fired. Ruined. His company. His reputation. And his $30 million escape plan. All gone. All taken by the hysterical, emotional woman he had underestimated. He was no longer a CEO. He was just a criminal. They say you should never build your house on a weak foundation. His was built on a lie. And I was the one who just pulled the cornerstone. He thought he was untouchable. But he forgot who wrote the rules. Have you ever been the one who knew the dirty secret, the one tiny detail that everyone else overlooked? Let me know in the comments if you've ever had to watch someone's arrogance make them blind to their own impending doom. Security. My new security team. I noted held the heavy glass door of the Nexus Tech building open for me. I had just finished the 3-hour transition meeting, The building, the assets, the staff, they were all mine now. As I stepped out onto the granite plaza, a disheveled figure lurched out from behind a pillar. It was Ethan. He looked ravaged. His $5,000 suit was rumpled. His eyes were bloodshot. And he hadn't shaven. He looked like the ghost he was. He grabbed my arm. "Chloe, please." I remembered the real accident. The one 3 years ago. It wasn't rain on the road. It wasn't a spun-out tire. It was him. He was street racing his brand new Porsche against his idiot friend from college. I remembered screaming, begging him to slow down. I had sacrificed my pride to plead with him. "Live a little." "Chloe," he'd shouted over the roar of the engine. "You're too uptight, just enjoy it." While I was clutching the dashboard, terrified for our lives, he was showing off for an audience of one. He was trying to prove he was a real man to the wife he'd always felt was his superior. He wrapped the car around a telephone pole. I woke up in a hospital. My head splitting. My body, a constellation of bruises. He, infuriatingly, was almost untouched. He blocked my path. His eyes wild. This was his attack. "Why?" he rasped. "Why would you do this to me? I loved you. Loved me." I remembered the hospital room, the antiseptic smell, the quiet beeping of the monitor. He sat by my bed, holding my hand. His face, a mask of practiced concern. It was the rain. "Chloe," he'd whispered, his voice shaking with fake trauma. "The car just is spun out." He let me believe I had a brain injury, when the doctor said I had a severe concussion but no permanent damage. Ethan was the one who suggested my memory was spotty. He encouraged my amnesia, because it was the perfect cover for his own criminal recklessness. While I was lying in that hospital bed, confused and scared, he was already gaslighting me. He was already crafting the lie that would become his shield. He didn't love me. He loved his alibi. "I loved you," he insisted again, his voice cracking. "And you? You were broken. You were sick. I took care of you. I gave up everything to take care of you. And you did this. You faked it. All of it." He was spitting the words at me. Desperate. Furious. He needed to be the victim. He expected me to break down, to justify myself, to admit that I was the monster. He needed to believe that his martyrdom was real, that the man who took care of his sick wife was the man he truly was. He loved that I was sick. He thrived on it. It was the only way he could ever feel superior to me. I had sacrificed 3 years of my life, my career, my mind, to see if the man I married was buried somewhere under that mountain of insecurity. I gave him a test, and he had loved failing it. "Let me handle the finances." "Chloe, you're not well," he'd say, while secretly draining our accounts for Zara. "Don't stress yourself with board meetings. Honey, you're too emotional," he'd coo, while stealing my ideas to present at those same meetings. While I was pretending to be fragile, he was loving his role as the strong, protective husband. He wasn't protecting me, he was caging me. He was using my sickness as the justification for his theft. I stopped. I looked him dead in the eye, my face devoid of all the emotion he so desperately craved. This was the twist. "You're right about one thing. Ethan," I said, my voice flat and cold. "I was sick. I was sick of your lies. I was sick of your weakness." His face crumpled in confusion. What are you talking about? I was never an amnesiac." "Ethan," I said. The words hit him like a physical blow. "The doctors told me I was fine. A concussion. Breeze. But fine. But you were so convincing." I don't." "The accident," I said, stepping closer, forcing him to look at me. "The one you caused. The one where you were street racing your Porsche to impress your idiot friends. The one you begged me to lie about for the insurance report, because you knew it would be a criminal charge." The payoff was his face. The psychological destruction. That was the truth he had buried under 3 years of concern. He wasn't the martyr husband. He was the reckless criminal who had almost killed me and then gaslit me about it. I decided. I continued, my voice merciless, right there in that hospital bed. To test the man I married, I decided to become the broken, amnesiac wife you always wanted. I wanted to see if there was anything left of you, or if you were just the insecure, arrogant fool I'd always suspected. I leaned in, my voice dropping to a whisper. You failed. Ethan, you failed every single day for 3 years. He just stared at me, his mouth opening and closing. No sound coming out. The realization was dawning. His entire success. His legacy. His genius. It was all a test. A game I had invented. That he was too arrogant and too stupid to see he was playing. He wasn't a player. He was just the pawn. He was broken. He thought he was the caregiver. And I was the patient. He defined me by my sickness because it made him feel strong. Have you ever been gaslit by someone who needed you to be sick? Or emocional? Or crazy? Just so they could control the narrative. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had to fight to reclaim your own sanity from someone who was trying to steal it. I left him there on the plaza. A shattered man staring at the truth of his own pathetic existence. I didn't watch him go. I didn't care. My focus was on the next piece. Zara. She had been fired from Nexus Tech now. Cygnus the moment the acquisition was finalized. She was also named as a co-conspirator in my multi-billion-dollar lawsuit. She was ruined. I had sacrificed my own time and energy to mentor her. To build her career from nothing. She had repaid that sacrifice with the deepest betrayal. Siding with my husband to steal my life's work. She had told me, I'll never forget what you've done for me. Chloe. While I was remembering that promise, she was using the very skills I taught her to try and erase me from my own legacy. She thought she was trading up, hitching her wagon to a visionary. She was just another fool. She found Ethan later that night. Not in a high-end club, but in a dark, sticky dive bar in the Mission District. He was staring into an empty glass. Zara was frantic, her face pale, her eyes wild with terror. Ethan, she hissed, sliding into the booth. Ethan, you have to do something. This was her attack. They fired me. I'm named in the lawsuit. My career is over. You have to fix this. She was desperate, pulling at his sleeve. She expected him to have a plan. She needed him to have a plan. She still believed, even after everything, that he was the genius he'd always claimed to be. She expected him to have a hidden account, a strategy, something. She had sacrificed everything for him, her integrity, her reputation, her career. She had betrayed me, her mentor, the woman who had given her a chance when no one else would. She had done it all because she believed his lies were the future. Zara. He'd promised her. In audio I had recorded but not yet released. You and me. A real power couple. Not like Ermani. While she was clinging to that promise of being a power couple, he was planning to use her as his scapegoat. While she was dreaming of being the new Mrs. Harrison, he was laughing with his college friends about how easy she was. Ethan didn't even look at her. He just stared at the wood grain of the table. This was the twist. Fix it, he whispered. He started to laugh. It wasn't a real laugh. It was a broken, hollow, rattling sound. Fix it. He finally turned his head. And Zara recoiled. His eyes were dead. I have nothing. Zara, he said, his voice a flat, empty monotone. It's gone. All of it. No, she pleaded. The offshore accounts. The bonuses. You promised me. They were all tied to Nexus Tech, he said, that dead laugh returning. All tied to the stock. It's gone. She took it all. He leaned in, and for the first time, a flicker of that old, cruel arrogance returned. But now it was aimed at her. You were just a tool. Zara. A stupid tool. You were easy. Zara's face crumpled. What? What are you talking about? You loved me. Loved you. He laughed again. I was going to dump you the week after the launch. You were getting needy. And that was the payoff. The final karmic destruction. Zara finally saw the truth. She hadn't just been betrayed by her boss and her lover. She had been played by a con man who was himself. A fool. She had sacrificed her entire career, her integrity, and her future for a man who had nothing, who was nothing. She had helped him try to destroy me. And in the end, they had only destroyed each other. She was blacklisted S2. E8. She was penniless S1. E8. And she was just like him. Completely. And totally. Alone. He had lost his company. He had lost his reputation. And now, he had lost his last pathetic ally. He had nothing left. Or so he thought. He still believed he had one last thing. He still believed he had the house. They say betrayal is a two-way street. These two were in a head-on collision. She thought she was his partner, but she was just his alibi. And he thought he was a king, but he was just a jester. Have you ever had to watch someone realize, far too late, that they were just a pawn in someone else's pathetic game? Let me know in the comments if you've ever seen a villain get exactly what they deserve. He had lost his company, his reputation, and his mistress. He was a pariah, but in his shattered, despaired mind, he believed he had one asset left, one final piece of my life that he could claim as his. The penthouse. I had bought that penthouse. A $6 million masterpiece of glass and steel overlooking the bay. Before I ever married him. It was my money. My name on the deed. My sanctuary. But he had lived there for 5 years. In his mind, it was his. He loved showing it off. Loved hosting parties there. Welcome to my home. He'd boom to investors, draping his arm over my shoulder. Chloe has such great taste. Doesn't she? She handled all the little details. While I was negotiating the architecture contracts and designing the interior that he was taking credit for, he was complaining about the monthly carrying costs that I was paying from my private Cygnus accounts. He didn't see the little details. He just saw the asset. He showed up at the front door just after midnight, drunk and broken, dragging a small suitcase. He fumbled with his key. It didn't work. He tried again. It jammed. I had had the locks changed an hour after he was fired. This was the attack. He began to bang on the door. A sloppy, furious rhythm. Chloe, Chloe. Open this door. This is my house. You can't lock me out of my own house. He was shouting, his voice echoing in the marble hallway. He expected me to be cowering inside. He expected me to be the hysterical wife, barricading herself in his property. He was probably already planning to call the police, to have me dragged out for squatting. I remembered the day we closed on the property. It was 2 months before the wedding. He had seen the paperwork. He knew it was in my name. He had pouted for a week. It's just symbolic. Chloe, he'd whined, of our partnership. It makes me feel like a guest in my own home if my name isn't on it. I had sacrificed so much for him already, my time, my energy, my career's visibility. But this was a line I wouldn't cross. My lawyers had insisted. It's just cleaner this way. Ethan, I'd told him, using the excuse I had prepared, while I was calmly protecting my $6 million asset. He was furious that I wouldn't just give him $3 million for symbolism. He wasn't just planning a marriage, he was planning his divorce. He was calculating his half before we'd even said I do. The twist was, the door didn't open. The intercom crackled to life. Sir, this is a private residence. A deep voice said, a uniformed security guard. One of my new guards opened the door. Can I help you? Ethan, enraged, tried to push past him. This is my house. You idiot. I live here. Get out of my way, schlo. He's right. Frank. I stepped into the foyer. My lawyer at my side. Mr. Harrison was just leaving. Ethan's bloodshot eyes fixed on me. Leaving. I'm not leaving. This is my house. I own half of this community property. You can't. My lawyer stepped forward, holding a file. Mr. Harrison, he said, his voice bored. Perhaps you should look at the deed again. This property was purchased on March 12th, 2021, by the Cygnus Vance Trust. That is before your marriage. Your name is not on it. It was never on it. Ethan's face went slack. But the divorce, the assets. As this is Ms. Vance's sole and separate property, the lawyer continued, you have absolutely no claim. In fact, the divorce papers you so generously filed this morning in Part 5 only served to finalize your exit. As of this moment, you are trespassing. The payoff was absolute. Trespassing. He thought of the divorce papers. He thought he was trading up and discarding damaged goods. He thought he was securing his legacy. He had no idea he was just evicting himself. While he was signing those papers with a triumphant smirk, he was unknowingly signing away the very roof over his head. The security guard, Frank, stepped forward. He was holding a single, small cardboard box. Your personal effects. Sia. Ethan stared at the box. He looked inside. A toothbrush, an electric razor, 2 changes of clothes, a framed photo of himself from a golf tournament. That was it. That was the sum total of his partnership. He was officially, unequivocally, homeless. Frank gently, but firmly, escorted a numb, silent Ethan to the elevator. I watched the doors close, sealing him out of my life, and out of my home. Forever. He had nothing. No company. No money. No mistress. No home. He was finally, truly, just the damaged goods he'd always tried to make me. A home is supposed to be a sanctuary. He tried to turn mine into a battlefield and a trophy. He just found out the hard way that you can't steal what was never yours. Have you ever had someone try to take credit for your home? Your space? Your sanctuary? Let me know in the comments if you know what it feels like to finally, definitively, show them the door. 6 months passed. 6 months of silence. I had liquidated Nexus Tech's assets, absorbing the useful parts into Cygnus and shutting down the rest. The brand was toxic, erased from the industry. Zara, facing total financial ruin and blacklisting, had agreed to testify against Ethan in the upcoming SEC fraud investigation in exchange for me dropping her from my civil suit. She was ruined, but she would avoid jail. Ethan, however, had disappeared. He was untouchable, not because he was powerful, but because he was irrelevant, swallowed by the obscurity he had always feared. I had sacrificed my career to execute this test. I had stepped away from the company I built, allowed my name to fade from the headlines, all to play the part of his amnesiac wife. I had given up my stage, my power, my very identity as a leader. He had always resented my success. It's intimidating. Chloe, he'd whine, after I'd close a major deal. It makes me feel small. While I was sacrificing my identity to make him feel less small, he was using my absence to build his reputation by stealing my work. He didn't just want my success. He wanted to be me. My COO, Julian, buzzed my intercom. Chloe, the 9 o'clock applicant for the junior coder. Legacy Systems position is here. I looked at the resume on my screen. Ethan Harrison. He had finally surfaced. After 6 months of burning through whatever cash he had, he was officially at rock bottom. He was applying for an entry-level job at a mid-level software firm called Aperture Solutions. He had no idea Aperture was a subsidiary I had acquired 2 years ago. A junior coder. I thought about the sheer, agonizing humiliation I had endured. I a woman who had authored the architecture he stole. I had to pretend I couldn't understand the complicated specs he and Zara flaunted in my face. He had called my simplistic musings cute. He had called me damaged goods. While I was pretending to be intellectually slow, he was mocking the very mind that he was robbing blind. Now, he was the one applying for the simplistic job. He was the one who was truly, unequivocally, damaged goods. He thought he was just coming for an interview to get health insurance. He expected an anonymous HR manager in a cubicle. He expected pity, perhaps, or at least anonymity. His name, Harrison. They was now so toxic in Silicon Valley that this was the only interview he could get. I had sacrificed my name, Chloe Vance, CEO, to be Chloe Harrison, Omniscient's wife. I had let him erase me. While I was living as a nobody, he was trying to make his name a legacy. Now, his name was worthless, and my name was on the deed to this entire city block. I told Julian to send him up, not to the HR floor, to the penthouse executive suite. The elevator doors opened. Ethan walked in. He was thin, pale, and wearing an ill-fitting suit I'd never seen before. He looked broken. It stopped dead. He stared at the massive office, the 360-degree views, and then, at me. He was standing in the CEO's office of the company he was applying to, and I was the CEO sitting behind the desk. His face, which I had last seen contorted in psychological agony on the plaza, crumpled. This was a new, lower level of hell for him. Chloe, he stammered. What? What is this? This is your interview. Ethan, I said, my voice perfectly neutral. But, Aperture Solutions. This is your company. It is, I said. I picked up his resume. I scanned the thin piece of paper. It says here you're applying for the junior coder position. You list Nexus Tech as your primary experience. I looked up, my eyes meeting his. Chloe, please, he whispered. I have nothing. I need a job. I'll do anything. I'm a good coder. I leaned forward. I'm sorry. Mr. Harrison, I said, using his name like a scalpel, based on your past performance and your well-documented tendency to mishandle company assets, not to mention your collaborative issues. You're simply not a good fit for this role. I pressed the intercom on my desk. Frank, we're done here. The door opened. The same security guard who had escorted him out of my home stepped inside. Ethan didn't fight this time. He was completely hollowed out. He just turned. A man with no company. No money. No mistress. No home. And now, no future. Frank gently guided him out. I watched him go. He was left on the street, staring up at the gleaming glass tower that was all mine. A 1. E. 8. He hadn't just lost. He had been erased. I spent 3 years pretending to be weak, just to show him how weak he truly was. The test is over. My name is Chloe Vance, and I am the CEO of my life. Thank you for watching this journey. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to fight to reclaim your own power, please hit that like and subscribe button, and share your own stories of resilience in the comments below. Remember, the world may try to break you, but it's the damaged goods that are often the strongest.